Hello and welcome to episode 12 of Matchett and the Other Guy. Kevin and I are once again sitting outside my home on Lake Wylie. And as ever, Kevin, get us up and running. What are we talking about today?
Well, something that's we've all done, and everybody's had a different experience of how they did it, but first jobs are always a very interesting topic.
Right.
And I believe yours, was it the Mazda dealership was your very first one? Or
Yes.
did you have anything prior to that?
No, that was it. That was, I started working in a little Mazda dealership almost straight out of school, which for me was 16, 17, that era. And yes, I did start working. Now, it was a great break for me. It was a wonderful experience in terms of my career. Because the owner was very keen on the correct training of apprentices. And that wasn't that common, quite frankly, in England back in the 1970s, where apprentices in many professions were used as cheap labour. And it was quite common in the automotive industry that apprentices were taken on merely to do oil changes and never really learned anything of value. But my boss, Terry Howlett, his name was, Terry was very keen on training his apprentices from day one to become proper mechanics, to understand how things work and to make components if you needed to make something. If you couldn't buy it, you would make it. And so it was a great break for me, yeah. How about you?
Well, my first one, actually, the discounting mowing lawns and such like that, the first one I ever got a paycheck from was actually a short-lived thing, but we lived down in Central Florida, and a friend of mine whose family had a orange packing set up where they actually had a store on the side of the road, but they would pack for shipment in the back. So in the store they would have, they would sell their citrus fruits, but they also had little citrus candies, jams and jellies. They had a little deli, they'd make you a sandwich. It was kind of those little roadside.
And they were making those jams and jellies, presumably.
They probably did.
Yeah,
I mean, looking back, I would think they did. But they also had, just a number of little things in their shop. But this was coming on Christmas, and they always have a rush at Christmas for shipments of fresh, oranges and grapefruits and such like that. And the place was called Gray's Orange Barn. And I went to school with one of the sons, or the son, and he just asked me one day, he said, we could use some help at the barn kind of getting stuff out for the holidays. Would you be interested? And I'm like, sure, I'll give it a shot. So I went over there. It's kind of on the outskirts of the main town we lived in. But it was very interesting. You kind of go in the back, and they had this conveyor belt, and the truck would be, I guess, backed up there, and you'd hear, meh, meh, and all of a sudden the conveyors would start moving, and down would roll these just tons and tons of oranges. And you had certain ways of packing them in this little mesh bag.
Okay, yeah.
And each one had to have a little slip of paper, I think was a requirement by the Department of Agriculture. I guess it was a legal thing that had to be, so each bag had to get that. And then you somehow, however you did, seal it up at the top and then put it on something that either went down the way or set it on a pallet. It's kind of hard to remember. But it was interesting that I was the only one that spoke English. Everybody else on the line spoke Spanish.
Yeah. Did that improve your Spanish?
No, I wasn't around long enough for really us to converse. But everybody was really nice, and we would just make our, just essentially talk as if best we could.
Right.
But a lot of it was just, it was kind of noisy and stuff anyway, really working. There wasn't a lot of downtime to visit, but everyone was really nice, and it was a neat experience. So I did that for 2 weeks. So I consider that my first ever job, and I still have the strip of paper that was attached to the paycheck.
That's terrific. Yeah. I wish I'd have kept my first paycheck. We used to get paid back in England in the day. It was fairly common that all folks that were paid weekly were paid in cash, and we would receive our wages. It couldn't really a salary, but we would receive our wages in a little brown envelope. It's like a standard envelope. Almost everyone had the same wherever you worked, I think. And the very nice lady from accounts would come round with a little basket every week, and these brown envelopes would be in the basket, and she would come round and hand them out personally. Here you are, Stephen. Here's your wages for this week. And yes, it's a wonderful experience. I mean, I remember I remember that first payday very, very well, but I wish I'd have kept the envelope just for, just for.
Oh, yeah.
But didn't.
A little bit of nostalgia.
Yeah. So what was after the orange job, what came next for you there?
So that was Christmas season of '84, I believe, and then sometime, I guess in early '85, ended up working at Eckerd Drugs.
Yes.
I don't know if you're familiar with Eckerd. I don't think.
Yeah, I know the name.
Anymore, but it's the same as Walgreens or Rite Aid or CVS. I ended up in the pharmacy area, kind of the checkout person at the pharmacy.
Okay.
In the back of the store. So literally, I had the counter in front of me, and behind me, raised up, was the pharmacy and the pharmacist or pharmacists that were working that day.
Yes.
And people would come in, hand me their prescriptions. I'd put them up on top, and then they would fill them. Either they'd fill them to be picked up then and there, or they'd be picked up later.
Yeah.
But working back in there, and then I would stock that area mainly. The bins would come in, and they'd be full of product to be put up on the shelves. And as a teenager, you're not aware of all the medical things that are in the world, but it's an eye-opening experience to see products that are used in that section of the store for various purposes that you had no idea ever existed, and the reason for their existence was even more shocking. So I got kind of an interesting thrust upon way of finding out how things worked in a pharmacy.
If you can help me with this question, please do so. Why is there that raised section in every pharmacy where the pharmacist is packing the pills into the little bottles? Why? I mean, I ask that because I've heard Jerry Seinfeld talk
exactly.
about that.
That's the thing.
Why
I've seen him do it in his routine.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, it's just I guess it was kind of the standard construction at one point. And everybody wanted to reinvent the wheel.
Yes, I don't think that is something that happens in England. I think it's to my experience, it's very much an American thing to see that raised platform.
Maybe.
The big chemist chain in England is Boots, or was been Boots for Boots the chemist seemingly forever. And I don't ever remember that same raised sort of dais idea of where in those shops. But quite fascinating. Now the interesting thing for me. You mentioned earlier on my first job at Howlett's in Loughborough, a little Mazda dealer, was Terry Howlett's insistence that I work for him. It was a wonderful. Thank goodness he was so insistent, and I don't know to this day why he was so insistent. But because I applied. I went to see at school at high school. We went to see the careers advisor. And, something we've chatted about before is, the idea of anybody from my school going to university was almost a non-starter. But we were always going to work in some sort of, craftsman position, whether it was a plumber or a bricklayer or a mechanic or whatever it would be, a machinist or something, plasterer or a mechanic. We were going to work in that industry. And I just remember the career advisor saying to me, what are you interested in? And I said, well, I'm not really sure what I'm interested in. I mean, I quite like literature and I quite like books and writing. And he said, well, can't think of anything to do with that. Have you ever worked on a car? And I said, well, one of my friends has got a car and we've worked on that. He said, you're our guy. It's pretty much that you will be a mechanic. Oh, okay. And so I filled out the application forms to be an apprentice, and through the school. And one of those forms was sent off to Howlett's, the Mazda dealer. And I should have attended an interview at the Mazda dealer for this position as apprentice. But as it happened, it was in the summer holidays, not long after I'd left school. I was away on a camping holiday. And when I came, so I missed it, and I didn't really think anything of it. I mean, I was so sort of young and naive. I thought, well, I'll apply for another job, I guess. So I missed that opportunity to be interviewed. And again, as I just mentioned, for reasons I cannot understand, Terry Howlett, who was the owner of Howlett's, went out of his way and drove to our house and said, young Stephen, you've applied for this job as an apprentice, and for reasons I cannot understand, you didn't attend the interview. Well, come down and attend the interview tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. And I was so sort of shocked that this chap...
He must have known something.
So, yes, dear old Terry Howlett, thank you so very much for what you did, because I could easily have ended up in any other profession, working anywhere else, but thankfully I ended up at the right place at the right time with a chap that really wanted to teach me the trade of being a mechanic, and it worked out okay in the end.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
My next one, actually, the next one that I went on to was kind of the one that I kind of defined, when I was working in high school. Not that it led to, career down the line, but,
Right.
TCBY yogurt shops.
Yes.
The next one was that. That was later that in '85. So I was had started, my junior year of high school.
Okay.
And they were opening one in our town. And I went and applied, well before they even opened. And they went ahead and hired me on. And so I remember I was digging out what became the flower bed. I was digging with a pickaxe.
Oh, wow.
Helping them kind of get the place going. So, which was kind of good because you're kind of there at the beginning. You're there for like creation. So, and it was a great high school job because the American thing was that most kids get a job in fast food, working at a burger joint or whatever. But
Right.
McDonald's, Burger King, or something, which can be greasy and hot and all that kind of stuff. And it was kind of refreshing to work in a yogurt shop, with essentially,
With a pickaxe.
starting with a pickaxe, yeah. But once we got the building up and we were inside, it was quite nice, and everything was always quite sterile to the 9th degree or 10th degree, I guess you'd say.
Yes.
That everything was always kept perfectly clean, and just it was a nice place to be. I sometimes just get away from everything else I had to do and relax when I got to work. So
Yeah, so I mean, it stands all of us, I think, in good stead that we are prepared to be versatile and try different things. Because I imagine, if your boss at the time said, "Well, come and work for me in this yogurt shop," but the first thing you're going to be doing is with a pickaxe building the flower bed outside, there would be folks who would say, "That's not for me. I don't understand any of that. Not getting involved in that." But I think it stands us all in good stead to try different things, be prepared to be versatile, and do whatever's necessary.
yeah, I very much like I say enjoyed the experience, and I got to work with people I went to school with some, but met some new ones, and then, I still remember. I just loved the clientele we had. I still remember some of them to this day. We were a very unique TCBY in that we had a drive-through.
Okay.
Most of them were in little strip malls or whatever, or inside the mall or whatever, I guess. But ours was an old Sunbank small teller building.
Okay.
So it already had the drive-through lanes built.
Sure.
So all we did was fill in the ones not closest to the window and made those a patio, and then left that drive-through lane. So we didn't have a speaker box or anything like that, but you would just pull up to the window and order off a little menu we had out there. But people generally knew what we had anyway. And there was this one couple that it got to the point where I would see them out the front window on the road with their left blinker on, and I would go ahead and make their treats, and I had them sitting on the windowsill when they got there because I knew.
Service, isn't it?
Oh, I can tell you to this day.
Yeah.
He ordered the large chocolate yogurt with pecans on it, and she ordered the medium chocolate with carob chips. We're kind of like a healthy chocolate chip.
Okay.
I still remember. This has been 35 years, and I still remember their order.
Yeah.
But and they would, and they were the sweetest people, and they would come up, and I'd ring them right up. And I remember one time they came through, and it was just after we closed, and I'd already Z'd out the register, and everything was kind of closing and such like that. So when they got there, I just swung open the door and said, "Hey, we're already closed for the night. They're on the house." Handed it to them and said, "I'll see you next time."
That's beautiful. Well done.
And they were so nice. I even invited them to my high school graduation.
Did you
Yeah,
really?
I gave them an invite. I don't think they made it, but still. But we had a lot of people that were regulars that you got to know and stuff like that.
I bet you saw quite a cross section of the community at your yogurt shop. Is that right?
Oh yeah,
yeah.
And when we first opened, it was kind of a big deal. We were a fairly small town, and I tell you, Sunday nights after Sunday church service, the line would be out the door and down the sidewalk.
Is that
when we
right?
first opened? Yeah. So it was a new thing in town. So.
Yes, so it's the country's best yogurt. Is that?
Yep.
Is it TC? Yes.
Yeah. Which it's people hearing it today probably think of what it is now. It's the kind of where you go up and you pour a certain amount and you take it and they weigh it and they charge you by ounce.
Right.
It wasn't like that back then. You just bought like a small or medium or a large, or if you wanted a topping, or we had milkshakes, or well, not milkshakes, obviously they're yogurt, but smoothies. We'd make with the yogurt and stuff like that.
Now, you obviously grew up surrounded by yogurt. yogurt, but as a kid growing up in England, I can tell you, yogurt was almost unheard of in my in my childhood, and it was considered something extremely exotic.
No, really?
Extremely exotic to have yogurt. Yeah. Yes. And we used to have also something that started to come on board later on. Now, I'm going to guess mid 70s to late 70s. It was like a yogurt drink, and they were sold in yogurt pots, but they were like in a champagne flute size yogurt pot with a little lid on the top. Yeah. Drinkable yogurt.
Yeah, it was years and years before I noticed that there were the drinkable yogurts. Growing up, even when I was little, way before TCBY or even moving to Florida, we always had like the yogurts that were like Yoplait, the kind of soft kind of with fruit in them. But you also had the kind that was like a little stiffer, almost not like gelatin, but
almost like a Greek yogurt, sort of.
Well, it's stiffer than that.
Oh wow!
And and we had those two kind. I liked either one.
Yeah.
And then they had the kind with the fruit on the bottom that was always just plain yogurt on top, and the fruit was on the bottom, and you'd reach down and whip it around and get it all mixed together.
Yes.
I ate those when I was less than 10 years old.
The problem for me, again, and it's something that we've talked about before, is I haven't really got a sweet tooth, and I do seem to think that a lot of the yogurts that were sold in England were particularly sweet. But if you could just get a plain Greek type yogurt that wasn't sweet, I love that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it just wasn't particularly common.
Well, essentially, the ones we had at our shop, it tasted like soft serve ice cream.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we always one machine every day was chocolate and vanilla, and then the other one would switch around.
Oh, really?
It may be strawberry and pina colada, or it'd be banana and peach, or whatever. And you could get anything that was in that machine, you could get swirled, just like you could get the chocolate and vanilla swirled. So there was 6 really different options you could pour out of it on a given day.
So did that change every day? Like, was every Monday strawberry day, or every Tuesday?
Essentially, it was. I still remember every Saturday it was always strawberry and pina colada in the other machine.
Yeah.
It seems like Friday was banana and peach or something like that. But it kind of got where it was in a regular rotation.
Yes. So where did you go from there? So that was. So you've worked in the orange store or the orange truck, the farm shop there, and then you've worked in TCBY. What was the next?
We had Eckerd in between.
That's right.
Working at the drugstore.
Yeah, they worked in the drugstore.
Actually, I really loved TCBY, and really it got to be it was into the last semester of my senior year in high school.
Yeah.
And I kind of just left, of course on very good terms, but I said, I'm going to enjoy these last few weeks of high school.
Right.
I'm going to go ahead and retire from the yogurt game. But I tell you, it was actually kind of funny because the owner of the business actually offered me a regional mannement position afterwards. But I was like, no, I'm going to college. I can't do that. But thank you. But
very good of him.
I know. Yeah. If he wanted to stay with the company or whatever, but I said I got to do college. But so I left a few weeks ahead of school ending so I could enjoy those last few weeks. We always had the ceremonies and the party, the stuff you do to wrap up high school.
Right.
So and then when I had the summer. And where I actually did some early college classes, but pretty much into that first semester. Actually, they were quarters back then at University of Tennessee. Now they're semesters. In fact, changed while I was there. I wanted to do something while I was working, or something to work at while I was at school, and I got a job at Chesapeake's restaurant in Knoxville.
Okay.
And Chesapeake's is the finest seafood restaurant in Knoxville. Ironically, I'm not a big seafood fan, but I got a job there that semester. Or quarter.
And what was your role there? What were you doing?
Actually, I was a busser, so I wasn't a waiter, but I would go around and pick up plates as people finished their dinners or finished their appetizer or whatever. And then I always kind of help clean and stuff like that. And I really liked it because it was very flexible. The waiters and wait staff, they were required to also work lunches. If they were going to work evenings, they had to work lunches because they couldn't just take the cream and not do the harder stuff, which might not be as fruitful.
Okay.
So as a busser, I didn't have to do that because they didn't need that much at lunch. So mine was much more flexible. But on the other side of that, too, was the waitresses and waiters were required to give me a percentage of their tips because I helped them through the whole evening.
Sure.
So really, I came out sometimes in the evening better ahead than somebody that might have had a slow night because I'm pooling from everyone that worked that night, kind of based on what they made.
Yes, yeah. And was that all done at the discretion of the individual servers, or did management get involved with that?
There was supposed to be a certain percentage they were supposed to give me, and he would actually, because he could tell how much they reported, and he would kind of make a little chart. And if somebody definitely was short, I had full reasoning and backup to go talk to him and go, you're kind of short a little bit here. But I tell you, then some nights they were just, made gangbusters, and they were like, or if I did a lot with them that night, they were just, give me a good bit extra.
That's great, yeah.
But it was a good college job, and again, very flexible for me to do things I needed to get done and stuff like that.
Yeah, I would have loved to have gone to college. I really would. I think I would have enjoyed it very much. And because of when I was working with Bannerton was located in Witney, Oxfordshire, and then at Enston, Oxfordshire, both within a very short drive of Oxford itself. And I've always had a soft spot for Oxford, and I love the architecture of Oxford, and love walking around the old college buildings there, and the idea that some of those college buildings have been a working college building for 1,000 years is just staggering to me. But something that we've chatted about before, though I don't think we've chatted about down here at the lake, is the standard education, the comprehensive education that I and my schoolmates all went through in the 1960s and 1970s in England. I mean, it was absolutely geared towards you will become, as we've just mentioned before, you will work in the trades at doing something. Again, you would be a bricklayer or a plasterer or a plumber or a mechanic or a fitter or whatever it would be. But the idea of going to college to me was it was something that just happened to other people. I mean, we were never even exposed to it. And I would love to have gone and studied English literature, and I had my English teachers and I really got on well, and my English teacher was the first person to introduce me to Orwell with 1984, and I was still relatively young, 13, 14, when she said to me, you should read Orwell 1984. I think you'll like it. And I just fell in love with it. I mean, just Orwell's writing is wonderful, and this idea of this incredible dystopia of Airstrip 1 and the characters that in 1984 have just stuck with me to this day. But nobody ever said throughout all of my education, if you apply yourself well to literature and reading, and there's no reason why you shouldn't apply to go to university. It was simply not going to happen. It was extraordinary. But thinking about, I'm not sort of bitter about it now, because I've had everything's worked out fine. Life just unfolds, whether you want it to or not. It just unfolds in front of you, and I've had a great fun time to this point in my life. But when I think about it now, why that should be, and now university in England is a lot more open to so many people, more people than ever it was back in my day. I can only assume that it was because England, Great Britain, if you like, but I mean, I can only really talk about my time in England. England was still getting over the Second World War. I mean, the First World War wrecked Europe and wrecked Britain, and then 20 years later we were plunged into another terrible catastrophe which lasted 5-6 years. So England, after 1945, when the Second World War came to an end, I mean, it took a long while for England to get back on its feet. And even into the 50s and 60s and into the 70s, England were looking for folks that could actually use their hands and do stuff, rebuild the country. And I am absolutely convinced to this day that that's why comprehensive education in England was all pushed towards getting folks to become apprentices of one form or another.
And it seems like there was quite a stretch between the two. Like you're either going to be a scholar or you're going to be a tradesman. There's not a lot of crossover or kind of in the middle.
No, and the odd thing is, of course, something we've spoken to in other conversations about childhood, even when, the conversation we have down here at the lake, when, the exposure that you have to the world as a child, you have nothing else to base the world on, right? Because it's the first time these things are happening to you. And I just find it extraordinary that nobody talked about going to college. Nobody talked about going to university. And I can count on the fingers of one hand out of all, literally seemingly hundreds of folks I was at school with. I can count on the fingers of one hand the folks that I know that actually ended up going to college. Hardly anybody. But you're absolutely right. I mean, certain folks were destined for, a career in academia and would go to college and university, and off they went. And the rest of us were going to be working with our hands. And so it was,
Well, and let's see, if I've got your chronological right, you went from the Mazda dealer to the BMW dealership?
I went the other way around. I worked at the Mazda dealer, and then I worked at Ferrari.
Okay, you did Ferrari before BMW.
Yes, I did Ferrari.
That's right.
And then I wanted to. Ferrari were wonderful in terms of their mechanical engineering. I mean, great sort of mechanical marvels. Sometimes it's quite a mystery how they work in the first place, but when they are working, they're wonderful machines. But I always felt that the electronics of Ferrari let the side down relative to what the German manufacturers were doing. And so when I wanted to make that move into Formula One, it was a heart-wrenching decision, but I decided to leave Ferrari and go into work for BMW because of their better electronics. I wanted to be better trained on electronics because I was trying to do, again, I was self-taught in everything I was doing in a way, so I was trying to sort of learn as much as I could as fast as possible, trying to get into Formula One. And so I had a good base of mechanical engineering, and I wanted to learn the latest state-of-the-art in electronics. And at the time, I think BMW led the field, so I went to work for a BMW dealership. And from there, I worked for BMW for precisely a year. It was like 365 days to the day.
Wow.
And then I was accepted to work with Nigel Stepney at Benetton. So moved down to Oxford for that job. So so that was it really. And I can remember leaving because my dad died relatively early. Dad died when I was 17, 18, 1982. And actually when he died. And so I was the breadwinner for the family. I was looking after Mum. And Mum was always very supportive of everything I was doing. And I said to Mum at one point, Mum, I'd really love to go and work in Formula One, but it's going to mean I'm going to have to leave home. I'm going to have to leave you. Are you going to be okay? And all of these things that are worries everybody. And she said, look, absolutely, I'll be fine. Just go and do what you want to do. Life's too short. You can't stay here. Go and explore the world and have fun. If you can work in Formula One, that'd be wonderful. So I can remember I went down for the interview at Benetton, and Nigel Stepney gave me the job, and he asked me to start. I think it was January 1990. Yes, it's early. It was just after Christmas and the New Year, so it's just into the start of 1990. And I can remember leaving home, packing all my things into a little Ford Escort which I had, and I rented a house, an apartment, a flat down in Woodstock near Blenheim Palace in Oxfordshire, which was a stone's throw again away from where the Benetton factory was based. And I remember driving down through the country roads down toward Oxfordshire with all my worldly possessions in this old Escort car. And I had so much stuff packed into the car that the rear of the car was weighed right down. And I had a much better view of the starry sky than ever I did of the road ahead. But I did manage to get down there safe and sound. Yeah, so that was a great sort of watershed moment for me. It was the leaving home moment, and also the starting work in Formula One all in one session, really. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you worked with straight on with cars for many, many, many years.
It worked out all right. And again, I wish I'd had the ability and the chance to progress towards going to university, but that simply wasn't going to happen. But that aside, I can't complain about my career. I've had a wonderful time. I had 10 years I've worked for the Ferrari road car division. I worked as a Formula One mechanic for 10 years and was part of a team that won 3 Formula One World Championships. I've written now 4 books, and the second of which continues to be Formula One's best-selling title ever. That led me into working with Speed Vision and Fox TV in the States for 20 years, and then my 5 years with NBC. So everything's all like we just said before, Kevin. Like, life will unfold whether you want it to or not. Even if you have those times, we all have those times in our life where we go through bad times and good times, and you're not sure what the future's going to hold, and times of stress and anxiety and worry. We all go through those times, and if anything that sustained me in the few times that I've been really sort of low is that knowledge that tomorrow morning the sun will rise again. The sun will come up, and you will be faced with tomorrow.
Yep.
And
you have another chance.
Yes, you have no choice. Life just will continue to unfold in front of you one day at a time. Yeah.
Well, I've always liked the statement, today is the first day of the rest of your life.
It's very true.
It's a starting point if you look at it that way. Nothing else is unfolded ahead yet.
Yes.
Make it happen.
And there's been a couple of times in my life when I've been financially broke, like twice, almost reduced to nothing. But you will always, that just means that you have to be more frugal with what you're doing with money. And if you can't afford to buy something, you don't buy it. I mean, that's something that my parents, most especially my mother, taught me from an early age. Look, if you haven't got the money to buy ABC, you're not going to buy it. Just wait until you do.
My dad said the exact same thing.
Just wait until you do, yeah. And you may not have the money to go to the restaurant of your choice, but you may be able to go to the fresh market, or you go to one of the supermarkets close to closing and being able to find those bargains, and you may be able to buy vegetables that you're going to make a soup or a stew with, and that's going to get you through that day. And then it's the next day and the sun rises again.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, something I've learned too is what you set out with, and maybe those when you go to college or something like that, you'll pick a major or something like that,
right?
And the career you end up with may have nothing, hardly at all related to what you studied.
I do see that
or the direction you
well.
thought you were going to go in. I see that a lot with by this age, I'm not doing anything really related to what I studied, and I see that in my friends too. A lot of them, just opportunities came about, and now they're doing something totally different, and hopefully they love it. Many of them do.
Yes, well, that's right, because it's impossible to say that life will always follow the course that you expect it to follow when you leave school or leave college. It doesn't. Life just doesn't unfold like that. It doesn't unfold in the way that you expect it to. It just unfolds, and it might turn to the left or it might turn to the right, or you might suddenly encounter a crossroads and you don't know which way to go, but you're going to choose one route, and that will be the route you follow, whether it's the right choice, the wrong choice, but the road will unfold, the next day will unfold ahead of you.
Well, and too, quite often you'll find, and you'll look back and you'll go, and it's all because I spoke to someone at this event who knew someone, or something like that. It may come down literally to just one interaction that sends your career trajectory, that somebody noticed and took you on a journey in a different path.
I am a big believer in exactly what you say there. I feel that throughout our lives we are destined to meet 4 or possibly 5 people at different stages of our life that will teach us something, show us something, direct us to something else that will change our lives. I think that's just the way it is. We're destined to meet A, B, C, D, E along the way, and that will change our lives. And for me, we've talked about Terry Howlett. Terry Howlett was definitely one of those people that if I hadn't have met him, if he hadn't have took me under his wing, my life would have been completely different. Better or worse, who knows, but it would have been different. And when I started, when I was applying for work within Formula One, Nigel Stepney, who was the chief mechanic at Benetton, was another one of those folks that I feel destined to meet. because again, he took me under his wing and gave me the possibility that he didn't need to take me on, because I had no Formula One experience at all. But he saw whatever it was in me, that desire, the push to learn, to be better than I am now, to be better tomorrow. He saw something in me and gave me that opportunity. And so there was number 2. Mm-hmm. And then when I started to write, the first book I wrote was Life in the Fast Lane, when I was still working at Benetton. And I approached Weidenfeld and Nicholson, who are a big publishing house in London, mainstream publishers, part of the Orion Publishing Group. And once again, I met a chap called the publisher there, the editor I was working with was Michael Dover. And Michael Dover, once again, saw something in what I was writing. He didn't need to give me that opportunity to publish my book. He did not need to do that. But yet we had many conversations. He took me under his wing, showed me the editing process, and said, "We can do this, Steve. I think your book is well worth publishing. It's worth my time and effort to get involved with you." And if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have had my first book published. And then the next guy that I met, that I think I was, again, ordained to meet, like preordained to meet, if you like, it was bound to happen, was Frank Wilson from Speed Vision, who gave me the opportunity to work in American television. So, and if it wasn't for all of those people seeing something, and encouraging something within me in my particular case, we wouldn't be having this conversation down at the lake now.
Exactly.
My life would have just unfolded a different way. And I'm sure if I now ask you, 4 or 5 people you've met, I'm not suggesting you need to or want to share those stories with me, but there are 4 or 5 folks that we all meet in life that push us in different directions.
Yeah, and just turning points and
yes,
speaking with that person and why and which direction it sent you in.
It's extraordinary, isn't it, how that happens? But life is life is a wonderful thing. It is a wonderful thing. It's to be enjoyed and to experience something of the world. This is a theme that we often come back to in our conversations down at the lake here, that it's a wonderful thing that we have. We just have to make best use of it. And again, going back full circle, I wish I'd have had the opportunity or the encouragement to go to university, but if I had done that, I don't think we would be having this conversation by the lake. I don't.
No, you're probably right. You'd probably be doing something totally different.
Be doing something totally
which you may
different.
enjoy, but still.
Yes, it's
nonetheless different.
That's right. I can't say that I really enjoyed all those endless all-nighters in Formula One when you're absolutely exhausted and so tired you can hardly stand. But when you look back on them,
you've never forgotten them.
You've never forgotten. They are remarkable experiences. Yeah. Well, I think we should think about wrapping up this little conversation.
I think we can.
That was a great fun topic, and I appreciate you very much bringing that up. And you always seem to pick topics of conversation which spark memories that, in my particular case, seem sort of long buried, and I can hardly remember these things until we get into a conversation.
I think we tend to be nostalgic, but I think we enjoy it, and hopefully you as the listener enjoys it as well.
I hope so. And on that note, gentle listener, thanks for joining us, and do please join us again on the next episode of Matchett and the Other Guy. Bye for now.
Bye.